This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Agitavach. The Akeida begins, Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ela. And it was after these matters. And the Mefarshim are all bothered. After what matters did the Akeida happen? It sounds like after a certain event happened, in the aftermath of that, we have the story of the Akeida. And Rashi offers a number of interpretations, either after the words of the Satan, or Rashi brings up Pshat after the conversation of Yishmael and Yitzchak, that when Yitzchak was born, Yitzchak had a milah at 8 days, but Yishmael had his milah at 13 years old. And Yishmael says to Yitzchak, "Hey Yitzchak, you're nothing. You had a milah when you were a baby. You had no choice in the matter. I was an adult. I could have stopped it, and I went ahead with it. I'm a greater Moisar Nefesh." Whereupon Yitzchak said, if God were to ask me to sacrifice my entirety, I would do so. So in the aftermath of that, so to speak, promise, Hashem said, really? Okay, let's see if you'll do it. We explain in our humble Sefer Magid Rokia ala Torah that perhaps that's why the Torah says, V'alekim nisa es Avraham, it doesn't say V'alekim nisa es Yitzchak, because although it may have been difficult for Yitzchak, but Yitzchak accepted it upon himself. He made a neder, he would do it, so he was obligated to do it. The issue with Rashi's Pshat, and this is discussed by Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, is that conversation between Yitzchak and Yishmael happened after Yitzchak's milah. That was the topic of Chamishi to Shishi. But the Akeida is Shvi, and in the interim, we have this little episode of a peace treaty between Avimelech, Fichol Sar Tzavai, that they come to Abraham and they want to make a peace treaty with him. And Abraham makes a peace treaty, and then we have the Akeida. So how could you say that the Akeida is in the aftermath of the conversation of Yitzchak and Yishmael? Why do we then have this episode of the peace treaty? And this is a question Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky asks on Rashi. The Rashbam himself is bothered by this, and therefore he rejects Rashi's Pshat, and he says that in fact the Akeida happened in the direct aftermath of the peace treaty, and the Akeida is a punishment for that peace treaty, that the word Nisa means to torment, and God was tormenting Abraham because he was not authorized to make peace with Gentiles in Eretz Yisrael. It occurred to me, based on the way Rashi understands this peace treaty, perhaps a new pshat in why it says by the Akeida, that in fact the Akeida was in the aftermath of this peace treaty, and it goes as follows. In Shishi, the opening pasuk of this treaty, Vayehi bo'es hahi vayomer avimelech ufichoyel sar tzva'oi el Avraham le'moyer Eloikim imicha b'chol asher ata oiseh. God is with you in whatever you do. Rashi explains, why did Avimelech and Fichol make this treaty? They saw Abraham's great success. They saw he was saved from the 4 kings, and they saw that he emerged from the neighborhood of Sodom in peace. So you say, well, then they should have made the treaty with him much earlier on, right after the story of Sodom. But Rashi adds, V'nifgada ishtay lezakuna. They saw that his wife had a child in her old age, and they realized that this Avraham is successful in all of his endeavors, be it political, societal, and personal. So they saw God is with him, and they saw that Avraham was close to the true God, and they realized that Avraham is invincible, and they figured now's the time to make a peace treaty with him. I humbly would like to advance that this was the introduction to the Akeida. Because Avraham now is reaching the highest echelon of his lifetime, of his career. Because the whole objective of Abraham was to teach the world that there's one God, that God is Olam Chesed Yibaneh. And what better way can Avraham Avinu do that than to gain the admiration and the respect of all the world's superpowers? Because if they recognize that God is with Abraham, then they now recognize who the true God is, and Avraham will be successful in influencing Talmidim, as that was his life's mission. So Avraham finally, at the end of his life, having a child, gave Avraham the support to continue and to advance his life's mission. Once this is set up, we understand this is the introduction to the Akeida. Meaning, now that Abraham now has received the reverence and the adoration, the adulation, and the respect of all the world's superpowers, now Hashem says, now you have to shech Yitzchak. Meaning, the peace treaty was set into place, lahagdil hanisayon. Look what a great nisayon is, the Akeida is. Because now, not only does Abraham have to lose his son, but he's going to lose the respect of all the nations of the world that now pay homage to Abraham, recognizing that God is with him. What will they say when they heard that this God that supposedly is with Abraham told Abraham, after blessing with a child, to kill the child? They'll say, Abraham, forget about your relationship with God. They'll lose all respect for Abraham. They'll say to themselves that no, the true God is not with Abraham. Meaning the episode, the narrative of Shishi to Shvi, where Abraham receives this the fear. Abraham is the object of the fear and reverence of the world's superpowers, will now put Abraham in a very difficult situation. If he's going to do the Akeida, then everything he worked his whole life to achieve in terms of influencing people will now go down the drain. So, Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ela, after this treaty, when all the nations of the world recognize that the true God is with Abraham, and Abraham, so to speak, is on the highest echelon of his career, now he's asked to perform the greatest feat in the history of man, which would undo everything he achieved until now. Perhaps that's the Vayehi achar hadvarim ha'ela, and it's specifically going on that peace treaty that we read about between Shishi and Shvi. Wishing everyone a good tavach, gezut tavach, a mazel dekavach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.